All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you got some coffee, had a nice rest, you're feeling energized, ready to hear a bit more about the Darwin Core Data Model or the Data Package. Just a second. There we go. Now, there's a little bit of a change to the session format this time. So last time we went through all 5 speaker presentations and had questions at the end. Today, during this session, after each presentation, we'll have the opportunity to answer 1 or 2 questions. We'll move to the next speaker, again, answer 1 or 2 questions. And then at the end, there should be some time for Q&A as well. And without any further ado, I would like to welcome John McChork, and he will give you a nice overview and background to Darwin Core Data Package.
That looks good. I was so happy that we had so much time for questions in the previous session. You may not have been in the previous session. What I'm going to talk about now will cover a lot of things that were questions, so bear with me on that. Another good thing was that we didn't have to go into a lot of gory detail, even from the questions. We're going to keep doing that here. So if you came to find out how the internal workings of the data package function, I'll talk to you later. This isn't about that. Okay, so the topic was this. Kate actually asked this same question in the very first introduction last time. And I found that in order to have our broad audience at this conference be on the same page, that wasn't the starting point. So I had to go backwards and ask, what is Darwin Core? Darwin Core is a standard, and it consists of documents and it consists of vocabularies of all kinds. When I say that, I mean that there are classes, there are concepts, and there are properties, which are things about those concepts, like an event date, where the class is an event. And there are sometimes recommendations for controlled vocabularies for those properties, which are yet other kinds of vocabularies. So Darwin Core treats with all of those things. I'm not pushing the right thing. Okay, so this is a bit of a diagram showing what parts there are of the Darwin Core standard, including some things that are highlighted in yellow. And I wanted to call these out because these are things under consideration right now that were not part of the standard. So one thing that may not recognize the complete significance of is, for the first time, an attempt to make a conceptual model, a semantic layer for Darwin Core. So that's this document called the conceptual model. Another part of the standard are the terms that I talked about. And in this review, we'll have new terms that are needed in order to support the use cases that are covered by the Darwin Core Data Package. And we'll have changes proposed to some existing terms to make things more clear based on the semantics that we're trying to implement here and the structure that we're adding. Come on. There. So this slide adds a document, a page, a web page that's part of the Darwin Core offerings, it's not actually part of the standard. It's a quick reference guide that tries to make as simple as possible the understanding of those terms that are part of Darwin Core. So it's a quick reference guide to the classes and to the properties that are used across Darwin Core standard. So we've already talked in the previous session about Darwin Core archives. Now, what are they? They're actually not part of the standard, but they use the standard, one document in the Darwin Core standard, to implement things that we can all understand because they follow a specification. So Darwin Core is a packaging of data, a format that uses Darwin Core terms and has schemas that we use to share data. And that's governed, the specification is governed by a Darwin Core text guide, which is part of the standard. So what's the Darwin Core Data Package? We finally got to the original question. It's the same thing. It's a way to package data for sharing, but it uses a different set of standards for how the description of the structure is described. So in the place of, oh, sorry, I won't go there yet. And there is a proposed document for how to create Darwin Core data packages. That is this Darwin Core Data Package Guide. It's the exact corollary of a Darwin Core text guide upon which Darwin Core archives are made. So if we're going to make Darwin Core data packages, we're going to have to follow the Darwin Core the Darwin Core Data Package Guide. All of what we're talking about, Darwin Core archives or Darwin Core data packages, follow, in practice, the Darwin Core conceptual model that I talked about. Okay. So Kate showed this, but was timid about going into the details. I'm going to go through the details fast because there are only a couple of things to highlight. They're the same, they have the same purpose, archives and data packages, but they have a difference. And the differences are that there are limitations to the Darwin Core archive, which says you can't go more than one layer of connection deep. And the Darwin Core data package says, that's fine with me. Go as deep as you want. So if you think about these in terms of our day-to-day technologies that we use, you could think of Darwin Core archives as fitting very well in spreadsheets, whereas Darwin Core data packages would be better suited to databases. So it's more of a flat model on the Darwin Core archive side and more of a relationship or relational model on the Darwin Core data package side. There are many things that are the same. There are no explicit semantics in Darwin Core archives, but it's kind of understood from our practice what the meaning is and the data that we share that way. Both Darwin Core archives and Darwin Core data packages will rely on EML, the ecological markup language, to share the metadata about a data set. And then finally, underlying the data in both cases are shared via CSV or tab delimited text files. So that part's not different. So what can a Darwin Core data package do that a Darwin Core archive can? First of all, an occurrence event is something different from a collecting event. That didn't used to be possible. You went out, you collected something, you put it in your collection, and the moment of collection said that an organism was there at that time. It's not so descriptive of what happens in paleo. You go and collect a rock, but that's not the occurrence of the species. The occurrence of the species was millions of years ago, perhaps. A different thing. So now we're able to talk about that event separate from the one that collected it. This is useful. We've seen already in the various talks earlier about how there was nesting, sometimes of material in case of the herbarium, sometimes in events in the cases of surveys. The same is also true of media, which I'll show a little bit of how that might work. I think that survey targets were already covered well enough. They're as opposed to being written into Humboldt Core with a very few kinds of target scopes. Here they're wide open. You define what's important for your survey target, whatever it might be. Another thing that's different here is you have the capacity to explicitly define the roles that agents play anywhere in your data. Whereas in Darwin Core, as it stands now, they're sort of written in agent roles. You can be an identifier, identify things, you can record things in the field, you can georeference things, but they're all predefined. With agent roles, you can define any role that any agent had. Again, it's in your hands. You get to decide that and say it. We also cover organism interactions in a more explicit way than was possible with resource relationships in Darwin Core archives. We have ubiquitous ways to make measurements or other assertions about any part of the model, whether it be about people or events or material or identification, anything. We also, as you have seen, added the nucleotide analyses to this. And another thing that is not evident at all in any diagram that you see is the capacity to declare a controlled vocabulary that you are using. So not only do we have terms that expect to be populated with controlled vocabularies, now we can say where your term is defined. So okay, so I'm going to ask the question, why did we invent something new then? Why didn't we just make Darwin Core archives work? A simplification. The first thing is it would explode everybody's current practice. Your Darwin Core archives wouldn't work if we tried to make it do what the Darwin Core Data Package needs to do. In order to maintain a community that has confidence in standards and going forward, we need to maintain that baseline and then add to it. So the Darwin Core Data Package just adds to it. The other thing that you might not realize is Darwin Core archives are based on a technology we designed for our community. There weren't frictionless data packages when we did this, so we made something up. It doesn't work with what the rest of the world is doing. So that's an advance that I think helps us using frictionless data packages. So I want to do a quick run through of a story, which in a Darwin Core archive, I would typify as being a detective short story. So Darwin Core archive can make you allow you to capture a detective short story. So here we have a bee that was photographed by somebody. The little icons for people say that the person who did the media was in the media table, the audiovisual extension. There are measurements or facts that can be done by people. That's an extension up there to the north with the ruler. You can have the event where someone captured it, and you can say things about what it was called using an identification history. So that's a detective short story. So now I'm going to quickly add the capacity to do the same thing and more with a Darwin Core Data Package. So here I would typify a Darwin Core Data Package not as the short detective story, but as an epic novel, or the capacity to have an epic novel. So I see a bunch of bees in the field, and I say, okay, I know what those are. I'm going to give them a name. I've made an identification. I'm also interested in a particular bee. And the reason I'm interested in that particular bee is because it went and it landed on a flower. I want to capture that because what I'm doing here is I'm making a survey that says, what are the bee populations? It's a monitoring survey of bees. And I'm particularly interested in when they do interesting things like land on flowers. So I've got a bee, I've got the flower, I've got the name for the flower as well. I'm not real good at flowers, so I give it a provisional name. I even put a vernacular name on that one. But I take a picture. Sorry, I don't take a picture yet. I capture that bee because I need to make sure of what that bee's identity is. And I take a leg off of it, and I take a DNA extract off of that, and I do a DNA sequence, and I use the sequence to identify the bee to make sure. It was identified in the field. It was identified. There's another arrow to the bee itself in the lab as a specimen, and another one to the sequence. 3 different identifications, which may or may not agree with each other. So, can there be more to that story? The answer is yes, as you might have guessed. We can make measurements or assertions about anything. So that adds this to the model. Can there be more? Well, yeah. We can have media. We can have media about just about anything. So that adds all of these arrows to the model. And can we do resources? Can we say what we made our identifications based on? Sure, we can do that. And so we can add bibliographic resources connected to all kinds of things. For example, where the sequence was mentioned. Okay, so, and agents, I already mentioned them. We add a whole bunch more arrows. Okay, so you can see why we call that the epic novel instead of the detective short story. This is what's possible. Now, do you have to do all that? No, not at all. You only need to use what you need to use, and you decide that, not me. So here's a version of the epic novel with all the things that might be interesting put into appendices or not shared at all. And you can see here that I've collapsed all those agent roles into the little teeny agents inside of the material table or the media table or so on, because those are hard-coded. Not only can I say anything about any agent role, I have some that we already know are interesting, and those are hard-coded, and those are kept from Darwin Core as we know it today. So who should care about all this? Well, the data publishers. Apparently they care because they're worried. This is all really complex. And the researchers who have the same problem, but probably have even more interest in making sure that the effort they spent on their research is faithfully captured and shared. And then the decision makers ought to care about this. And then the people who have to really help all these are the data aggregators. So that's not a new story. So where are we? What's next? We're in the middle of a public review of various aspects of additions and changes to Darwin Core to support the kind of thing that I was just talking about. And so here we are on October 21st, and the public review began in the middle of September, and will go at least until the middle of December. Could go longer, depending on how we do with reaching a consensus in our community. And the idea is that when they're done with that, there will be a ratified additions to the standard. So what commitments are there to Darwin Core Data Package? Well, first and foremost, there will be continued support for Darwin Core archives, not just in that they will be accepted, but there will also be training. In addition, there will be continued and augmented support for Darwin Core data packages because we know where we're at in this community and we need to create capacity. Publishing platforms such as the GBIF Integrated Publishing Toolkit and the Metabarcoding Data Toolkit already publish Darwin Core data packages in testing, but they work. We have a data mapping guide which helps you to decide, what's the process, what I need to go through to get my data into a Darwin Core data package, the order of events, because it's kind of a natural order of events that you have to follow. We already have seen in the use case examples, everybody had their repository of an example data set already mapped, so you can have access to those. And part of the standard will be the Darwin Core. Sorry, this isn't part of the standard. This is something we have in progress, is a Darwin Core Data Package User's Guide, which we expect to be an immense effort, community produced, providing recipes for how to do certain kinds of things. I have this problem, here's how I solve that problem. That's what that should be. And when this is all done, supposing we have ratification, then all schemas will go under the maintenance of the Darwin Core maintenance group. These are additions to Darwin Core. It will be a Darwin Core maintenance group maintenance problem from then on out. And our hope is that beginning in 2026, we'll actually have scheduled releases every quarter, as opposed to when John has time to do it. So this is just a quick list. I don't want to go through what each one of those is to give you an idea of what's out there already to play with. And all of those are accessible via the link in the lower right. which is about a landing page basically for the ongoing Darwin Core Data Package review. So thank you. We do have time for questions, yes? Two says. There's one here. Here comes a microphone.
Hello, John. I like this a lot. Sounds like extended specimen concept. How is it similar? How is it different?
It's the extended specimen almost entirely. No, start over, John. Be correct. The digital specimen effort, we've gone through the process of doing the mapping. And it was found that it was actually, as opposed to what others may have perceived, it was actually easier for them than it would be for most of you to make the mapping, because the structures that they designed were already very much like this. Confirmed? Yeah. So this isn't a replacement for it. This is something that used use cases that we defined across all kinds of biodiversity, not just material, and covers some of the same area there. Probably Wouter wants a follow-up with that. He deserves a follow-up. Can you? Who has the mic?
The data model for the digital specimens, which should enable digital extended specimens, was not created in isolation. It started a bit earlier than this work, but it was developed in the same time frame. So there was a lot of communication to align these concepts. And I think the open data model, and there's a presentation about that tomorrow, is a bit of subset of this, because it's specifically for specimens, and this also capture other events.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Wouter. Nikki's got her hand up. Oh, it's time. Sorry. Later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'd like to welcome our next speaker to the stage, Anton Gunsch. He's going to talk to you a little bit about ABCD and how that fits into the data package realm.
Yeah, many thanks, and also many thanks for the opportunity to present here a little bit about ABCD. And I hear you asking, isn't this a little bit off topic? Because after all, this is a Darwin Core Data Package workshop, but I hope that at the end of my presentation, you will agree that it's not off topic. And before going to this, I would like to take you back a little bit into the history of biodiversity data model. This is 30 years ago, where this very community put their heads together, scratched their heads, and were working on data models for observational and specimen data. And one very prominent example is the work I've mentioned here by Walter Berenson, who created with his team a comprehensive reference model for biological collections and surveys. And this was, if you look at the diagram, it was very much a relational model describing the relevant classes we would need as a community, attribute definitions, and essential vocabularies we would need, and most importantly, the relations between our essential data classes. And those models were mainly used for implementing local databases in isolation, more or less. It was rather not intended to create data structures for creating international networks and for transferring data from A to B. And that was actually a pity because the models were quite elaborated and very well designed. But nevertheless, the community started to create pilots for networking data, not using those complex data models, but much simplified data models. One of those pilots was the species analyst networks, which many of you probably still know. That was based on the Z3950 standards. Standard, it was a protocol mainly used in the library community. And another network, early network, was the European Natural History Specimen Information Network, based in the EU and based on HTTP, mainly used for transfer of specimen information. So that one used XML for encoding responses based on a common document type definition. It had basic classes, hierarchies, and repeatable elements. I have to admit it had limited scientific use because only a few data sources could be connected. I think like 6 or 7 data sources. But what came out of this project actually was the I don't know, agreement that XML would be the right way to go forward, because it had the right balance between comprehensibility of the model and also expressivity. And that was then actually the basis for creating the TEDWIC data standard access to biological collection data, ABCD, which aimed at harmonizing collection data across networks. It was developed between 2001 and 2006 by an international global team of experts, and the major properties of this model were that it was comprehensive. I don't tell you how many elements it has. It has many hundreds. It is highly hierarchical, losing a little bit of the relational expressivity of the early models. It has implemented a concept for variable atomization, which I will not talk about because it was a mistake to do this. Only a few controlled vocabularies and extension slots used for special interest networks, such as the Global Genome Biodiversity Network, and it had the capabilities for capture structured annotations. The version history is a mess. We have some major versions, and between those major versions, strange things happened. There were, if you look at the version 206C, that's the famous missing version. I don't know why it's missing and where it is, but it's the missing version. 5 minutes, I know. And there are other branches and all kinds of versions created in the context of projects. But the major versions are ABCD 2.06. This is the most widely used version, as well as ABCD 2.1, which is used by the biobank community, and now also ABCD 3.0, which turned ABCD into a semantic standard. There's a lot of infrastructure, software infrastructure around ABCD. Some components which are used are the ABCD provider software. There are tools for harvesting and indexing ABCD documents, and there's also the portal software and monitoring components for special interest networks. So how it is used? There are presently 100 installations worldwide of ABCD providers over 10 special interest networks. ABCD is integrated into the GBIF data corpus. It is heavily used in the national context in Germany by a structure called NFDE for Biodiversity, for data exchange between components in the system. And there's also a BioCase help desk, which helps providers to map their data to ABCD and deliver it, for example, to GBIF. But also ABCD is used as a kind of container for other community standards. Examples are the extension for geosciences, also the DNA extension for ABCD, and there's also an anthropological extension which uses the ABCD schema. So what does this have to do with Darwin Core Data Package? Once more, if you remember the early models, the relational models, and now have a look at the Darwin Core Data Package modeling, it looks very similar. Both are really relational structures. So for us, it's really, for the ABCD and BioCase community, it's really a relief to see that now the original idea of relational data representation and transmitting relational structures over the internet finally comes true. So what we would like to do as a BioCase ABCD initiative is really to support this initiative, for example, by contributing to the development and maintenance of the Darwin Core Data Package standard, and also for developing templates for typical usage scenarios. We will, however, continue the BioCase help desk, so we will not let the BioCase ABCD providers alone, but we will extend the focus of this help desk to structured, highly structured data, complex data using the Darwin Core Data Package technology. And I can't read more what I here on the slide. Yeah, that's actually, again, that we want to integrate the Darwin Core Data Package structures into our help desk structures. And that's exactly what I wanted to say. Thank you.
We're currently a little bit behind schedule, so we have time for one question, and then other questions we'll need to follow up with Anton after. Does anybody have a question? Nope. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Anton. So our next speaker, Sam Lifong, was not able to make it here to the conference this week, unfortunately, but he did provide a virtual presentation, which we will show here momentarily, giving you an overview and introduction to the integration of DISCO with Darwin Core Data Package.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sam Lifong, and I'm really sorry I can't be with you there in Bogota. But I'm still happy that I get this opportunity to present how DISCO's OpenDS, Open Digital Specimen, facilitates data interoperability with the Darwin Core Data Package. So DISCO stands for the Distributed System for Scientific Collections. And our aim is to facilitate and accelerate the digitization of European specimen data. We want to do this by creating rich and high quality, fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable digital objects. We call those FDOs, in the form of digital extended specimens. And what is a digital extended specimen? That's here on the right side, where we kind of start with the specimen itself, the physical object. We then create our first metadata record of it, often in a collection management system. And this is where DISCO wants to create those bridge, those extra step to the extended specimen, where we link the specimen information with data from other infrastructures, such as DNA infrastructures or taxonomic infrastructures, and where together with our members and machines, we want to curate and extend the information so that in the end we can create valuable research products which can be used by researchers to combat the biodiversity crisis that we're in at the moment. So going back, how can we then structure all this specimen data? And this was where we kind of struggled a bit in 2022. So there was no real standard that we could reuse. So we're wondering, should we create something ourselves, or is there something that we kind of can reduce? But you always the risk, if you're thinking about creating new data standard, is that there's already a situation where there are different standards that might not all be specific for your use case. you're thinking, well, it's, yeah, we need to create something better. You create a new standard, and now you have more standards that kind of need to be interoperable with each other, and you actually end up with the messier landscape than you started out with. So we would rather not do this. And this was also around the time where John Riscoridge and Tim Robertson gave a presentation on their work for the GBIF unified model, which actually covered and aligned quite well with the challenges that we were having. So we kind of decided that rather than figuring out ourselves, which is also kind of a long and painful process, creating a data standard, we would rather reuse the work that they had been doing with the community and see if we can align ourselves with that part. And then as OpenDS being specifically at the specimen data. Which actually what we did, and we moved this forward through public review last year, and it's now being used in production. And now with the development of the Darwin Core conceptual model, the next steps after the GBIF unified model, we wanted to check if we are still aligning in that regard. After extensive discussions and review, a lot of the things that we move forward with OpenDS is still in alignment with how the conceptual model works. And we kind of view OpenDS as a kind of separate specimen-specific implementation of this Darwin Core conceptual model. So the Darwin Core conceptual model, which you can see here, a bit of overview of, actually kind of structures the Darwin Core terms into classes and points out the relationships to each other. And it kind of gives a blueprint of how you can structure your typical biodiversity information workflow. And in that regard, we see the Darwin Core Data Package is a kind of full reference implementation of it. It implements all these classes in a specific serialization structure and highly normalized tabular data structure where CSV files are used. And OpenDS is quite different in that regard. We focus ourselves on specific specimen classes, so we don't implement all classes. We don't implement any of the nuclide analysis or nuclide sequence. We really focus at the specimen, and we then structure it in an object-oriented document-oriented approach using JavaScript object notation. So the specimen itself is one big object, and all the information regarding the specimen is in there. So we kind of denormalize all that information and duplicate that information in each object. Why is that? Because we expect a lot of mutation on single specimen. So we're not doing large bulk aggregations. Now we're doing mutations on single specimens. And that asks for kind of different approach, different serialization of that data. Yet, what are the advantages of aligning to this conceptual model? Well, for us, I think the biggest is that we hope to get a kind of common data language. And maybe not only a data language, but also a human language, in the sense that if we are talking about a specific term, if we say Darwin Core habitat, that we all know we all have the same concept in our mind on what that means. So we have the same vocabulary in that sense, which is really, really powerful if we can align that. And then, of course, we hope to leverage this work by implementing it based on this hopefully new TEDx standard. We hope to leverage all this work of this community of experts, which is quite amazing that we have this TEDx community where we can collaboratively put our effort into developing this model and give feedback on it. And we ourselves can hopefully give a bit back in through our experience with the model and see if we can work together on continuously improving it. And the other part is that we hope to get a kind of lossless data transfer from our internal structure, the Open Digital Specimen, to the Darwin Core Data Package, which is kind of the transportation model that we use, so that we don't lose any information in that transformation to the Darwin Core Data Package. So the implementation, we implement about 23 schemas, and we were able to map almost all of our OpenDS terms. In our acceptance environment, you can now download any dataset that we have, both as a Darwin Core archive and as a Darwin Core Data Package. So you could actually view those two and see what the differences are. And I think the biggest dataset that we have now as a Darwin Core Data Package is about 750,000 records in total. And when of course the Darwin Core Data Package in conceptual model goes through the ratification process, we'll also move this to our production environment. This is kind of the overview. You'll see that really material and media is at the center of our OpenDS model, and of course of our Darwin Core Data Package implementation. And I've kind of shortened it that the A's are the agent. AS stands for assertions, and ID for the identifier class. And yeah, not all of our specimen will have all this information, but the implementation is there. So what are the lessons that we have learned from this implementation? Well, the interoperability is good. We don't lose a lot of data in the transformation. We do need to do some trickery in the sense that, yeah, we have this document approach, and a lot of the relationships that we have are actually implicit in it because they're nested in this bigger object. We don't need specific identifiers for them. So what we did need to do was create a lot of identifiers, which we do through an MD5 hash of the object. And then we needed to duplicate all the information where we use temporary tables. So we hash those and use those hashes as primary identifiers for the object, put it in database tables, and then dump those to CSV files so that we get the data package structure that we want. Moving forward, I first want to take a moment to congratulate the whole Darwin Core conceptual model team. So John and Tim and everybody involved in getting this done. It's a monumental effort, and please applaud them for it. And I'm hoping that you would be willing to participate in the public review. It's essential to now get review back from the general audience, so we can further improve it. And as OpenDS, after ratification process, we will move this and probably move the next iterations of OpenDS further closer to the conceptual model and further align classes and terms where they, if they aren't already. And we're looking forward to further collaboration on controlled vocabularies. And this was my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that, Sam. As far as I know, Sam is online and able to answer questions in the chat for people who are online, but unable to answer questions to everybody here in person in Bogota. If anybody has any questions, I believe, Walter, you said you're allowed, you're allowed, forgive me. That's horrible. You're able to answer a question or two if anybody has one about Sam's presentation. No, silence. Okay, then we will move on and shift directions ever so slightly. Our next speaker, I'd like to invite to the stage Federico Mendez, is here to talk to you a little bit about the implementation status of the Darwin Core Data Package within GBIF.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Federico Mendez. I work for the GBIF Secretariat in Copenhagen, Denmark. And I'm going to give you a presentation about the implementation status of Darwin Core Data Package at GBIF. The implementation plan has defined the 4 main areas of implementation. The first one is related with data standards, promotion, and support. That work has been presented by others here. The second one is related with data publishing, and is basically how the existing data publishing workflows needs to be adapted to support Darwin Core Data Package. The third one, it relates with once a data set that has been shared as a Darwin Core Data Package, how that data set should be presented and represented in the GBIF platform, in the GBIF APIs, and also in the GBIF data portal. And the last one, the data services, that's the more long-term vision. It is and it's about the design and implementation of the data services of the data that has been shared to datasets as Darwin Core Data Packages. Okay. But based on those 4 areas of implementation, we have defined for the coming year 3 milestones. The first one is related with the data publishing layer, and it's about how the existing publishing tools, the IPT and the MDT, should be adapted to support Darwin Core Data Packages. The second one is once we have a data set that has been published, what will be the minimum implementation to show that data set in the GBIF portal. That work is going to be done in the new GBIF website, that should be available before the end of the year. And the last one, that's the long-term vision of how to implement the integrated data services of data that has been published to data packages. For the milestone, for the first milestone, so we have the point 1 and 2 are related with the schemas and with its standards. That's the work that has been presented already. The third one is about the implementation of the provisional implementation and support in both the IPT and the MDT. My colleague Mika, he's going to do a presentation about the current implementation in the IPT and also what are the future plans for the IPT for Darwin Core Data Packages. There's already, as John mentioned, there's already a provisional implementation in the MDT, and I'm going to show a couple of slides about that. And then we will also, we like to implement data validation tools and mapping tools, not only in the context of those tools, but also as a data services that a user can access in the GBIF portal to validate the Darwin Core Data Packages that have been assembled out of the context of those tools. Milestone 2. We would like to mature the technical and user documentation, and that's the work that has been also presented. That's can be said that is half done so far. We would like to improve the user experience for mapping data in the IPT. Michael is also going to present some of the ideas around that. In the first milestone, we're only doing the provisional support, but the idea is in the second one, we're going to mature the implementation of the mapping data in the IPT. We would like also to initiate a versioning strategy for progressive improvements. We are totally aware that this is just after the public review is the first and draft implementation of the standard, so we have to anticipate how are we going to accommodate the changes in the future. Point 4, we would like to implement the services and tools for conversion between both the Darwin Core archives into Darwin Core Data Packages. And in cases when it's also possible how to convert from data packages into Darwin Core archive, and that will enable the different ingestion pipelines in GBIF to use in both to use that data in both ways. And then the final one is how to improve the data set representation in the GBIF portal. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give an example of the progress that we have done around that. For the milestone 3, that's the work for the future. We haven't defined specific tasks. We know that we have some key challenges. And those key challenges basically follow some of the big questions. Tim Robertson mentioned some of those. In this milestone, we would like to tackle questions like, what are going to be the new data services? Do we need multiple data portals, given that we're going to start receiving data sets with very different nature of data set to the data set that we have seen so far? And then in this milestone, we'd like to focus on the design of implementation of multiple APIs and also in data services. So what we have done so far in this example, I'm showing here, this is the Metabarcoding data toolkit. In the Metabarcoding toolkit, a user can upload a set of data files then can provide some basic mapping from those data files into Darwin Core terms. And at the end, as a result, can export the result as a Darwin Core archive or as a Darwin Core data package. That's the provisional implementation that we have so far. In this case, I'm skipping all the registration steps in the middle, but the Darwin Core archive data package is being registered in the GBIF platform. And then we can see here that we are showing a basic, let's say, graphical representation of how the dataset is organized in terms of tables, the fields inside the tables, the relationships between the tables. And that's basically a graphical view of the data package descriptor of that specific data package. I just want to emphasize that this is work in progress. This is still in the developing environment. In the future work is to make this available for the public. And if I was in the demo site, I can scroll down and I can actually see some of the data that are behind of those data resources. So in this case, for example, you can see it's a basic exploration of the event table of that data package and some of the other tables. This is just to give the user some kind of very generic perspective, an overview of what data is behind a data package. What is the future work for this? So we would like to implement a download format that's a Darwin Core data package. We would like to make this work available also in the demo site, in the test site, in cases when the coordinates are provided in any of those tables. We would like to provide a map view of that data. We will also like to provide some basic metrics in the sense of how many records are behind a specific table, what are the specific columns, how many records are in a column, how a column is being populated, for example. And then we would like also to integrate this with the validation tools that can provide some kind of report about the validation status. Okay. And we would also like to provide some kind of basic API that supports this data navigation. Sorry. Just to mention a couple of things at the end, we have been working in two libraries. One is a basic Java library that allows to validate and to read the data packages. That's an extension that we've been working. And also we have implemented a library that allows to read the data package and importing multiple data stores. At this moment, we support Elasticsearch, Postgres, and ClickHouse database. Yep. Sorry. Yep. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Federico. That was very, very insightful into everything that's going on here at GBIF. And I would like to welcome Mikhail Podolsky up to the stage to continue this conversation and tell us a little bit about the data tools that are being developed and explored.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mikhail, and I'm lead developer for IPT, or Integrated Publishing Toolkit in GBIF. IPT was mentioned multiple times today, and it's basically a publishing tool. It's a formatting and sharing tool to GBIF and Orbis. So, and today I'm going to talk about implementing Darwin Core Data Package in IPT and what challenges we had along the way and ideas we had for it. So let's get started. So what are the challenges we have currently? So the first is it's a new model, which can be overwhelming for users because it's a new model. It's huge. There is a lot of tables in it, and what are those tables and what fields it is? So it's complicated. The second one is it's relational model. So there will be a lot of identifiers and connection between those tables, and there's a lot of joint tables. So that's the second thing. Yeah, and the third, I already mentioned, that's identifiers and how we maintain those identifiers, and yeah. So the current view of IPT is so-called display all the tables. So you can see how it would look like if we put all 70 plus tables in the dropdown. So it obviously doesn't scale, this approach. So we have to find a UI solution to solve this issue. One of the ideas to solve this thing is introduce new concept of a profile or a template, which would be a subset of the model with some tables and fields, their fields, with a comprehensive description of it and some keywords for search. They can be public or local, they can be downloadable online or not. Or yeah, you can create resources from these templates, you can edit those templates, and yeah, basically that's the idea. So here's the example for example, for paleontological data set, which is made up example. It's not the real data set profile. So just the idea. It can be many profiles. Sorry. So for implementing profiles and managing them in the APT, we would need a tool within the APT to manage those profiles, to edit them, to add fields, to add tables, and save them, upload them, download them, and basically the whole management structure. So next one. All right, so we're done with profiles. The next thing is navigating the model. Either we map in just data or editing profile or whatever, we would need to navigate model somehow. And as we've seen already multiple times, it's a big model. So we would need some kind of help with that. So we have some ideas with that. That can be categories for categorize some of the tables for simplified search. It can be improved drop-down list, which we already have in Darwin Core Test IPT, and it can be advanced search engine for these tables, terms, or everything. So this is about search, how we would like to see search for this for Darwin Core Data Package. So if we put, for example, collector, so it would look through all the fields, examples, and descriptions, and will provide the comprehensive view of all the matching things. All right, let's go next. So for another idea is visualize the model. So currently we have on the resource page, we have the all list of all map tables and how they map from sources to those tables. But it probably would be a good idea to have some kind of schematic visualization, which is to the left with all connections. That would be useful. I think that's already implemented in the MDT. And the last idea was mentioned multiple times during previous presentation. It's complexity of managing identifiers. So there could be many ideas, but we were thinking about something that we called a splitting tool. So let's say we have an example source data with the event ID and date and a collector. And we would like to split that into 3 tables in Darwin Core Data Package. And every single table has its own identifier. And it would be good to have some kind of tool that would generate those ID and will just help users with this. And so it can be just data without all those additional identifiers. Thank you so much for your attention. That's it.
We have time for a question, if anyone, yeah, me? It's a quick hand.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. My question is for Fede. I'm wondering what the milestones, are they going to be implemented sequentially? The reason I ask is because it's important for the data consumer to know what is the meaningful stage for them in order to develop products. And this information should go into how to guide to publish the data. So yeah, it would be nice if you could please address that. Thank you.
That's a very good question. I didn't address that in the presentation, but no, the answer is not that sequential milestones, especially the milestone 1 and milestone 2. So the intention is that the user can start publishing the Darwin Core Data Packages as soon as possible, and we need to provide some kind of mechanism to view those datasets, and that also has to be accompanied with better documentation and technical documentation of the Darwin Core Data Packages. So no, that was I omitted that in the presentation, but that is especially the 2 first ones are not sequential milestones. The third one is a bit of the work for the future. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna need to move on to the next presentation. Thank you very much, Mikhail. Thank you very much, Federico. So we've come a long way in 70 minutes from an excellent introduction and overview of what the Darwin Core Data Package is, to getting a better understanding of how it will relate to other standards, the DISCO's OpenDS and ABCD, getting an idea of where we're at here at GBIF in thinking about how we would implement the data package. One thing we didn't do was explain what a data package is. Don't worry, John has a session on Friday doing just that, introducing you to data packages. So for those of you who, like me, coming into this, didn't actually know what a data package is, think I have a basic understanding now, attend John's session on Friday. Now we will move on to our last presentation for the day, and this is a virtual presentation from Steve Baskoff, and it's bringing you to the crux of the issue, the reason why we're here, introducing you to Darwin Core Data Package, introducing you to the fact that this is under review through TADWIG, and Steve will help you understand. For those of you who are not familiar with the review process, he will introduce you to that and help guide you through that. So that you can leave here today and go rush out and test the Darwin Core Data Package with your own data.
I'm Steve Baskoff, the convener of the Darwin Core Maintenance Group. In that role, I'm responsible for overseeing the management of the public review of the Darwin Core Data Packages proposal. Some of you may have participated in past reviews of proposed changes to Darwin Core vocabularies. For those who haven't, I will briefly summarize the general change process, then explain how the process for this review differs from past reviews. The overall process of making changes to a TADWIG vocabulary is governed by the vocabulary maintenance specification and is summarized in this diagram. Any person or group may propose changes or additions. Periodically, the maintenance group responsible for the vocabulary will review proposals in light of 3 criteria: demand by the community, efficacy to meet an identified need, and whether the change will maintain stability of existing implementations. Proposed changes meeting these criteria are approved by the maintenance group to undergo a 30-day public comment period, during which consensus about the proposal is sought. If consensus is achieved, the executive committee makes sure that the procedures have been followed properly and ratifies the change. More complicated changes that go beyond the basic bag of terms layer of the vocabulary are known as vocabulary enhancements. Because they're more complicated, it's required that user feedback documents be submitted with the proposal to make it clear that the package of changes are needed and will work as described. In the case of the Darwin Core Data Packages proposal, there are two documents that describe structure on top of the basic term layer. The conceptual model document describes in human terms the relationships among classes in Darwin Core. The Data Package Guide specifies a mechanism based on frictionless data packages for documenting the fields in data tables and how those tables are related to each other. A number of terms need to be added or modified to make it possible to impose this structure. In the same way that Darwin Core archives implement the requirements of the text guide, Darwin Core data packages will implement the requirements of the data packages guide. However, these implementation details are outside of the standard and aren't part of the review. To view these documents and the proposed term changes, there are links from a landing page at the URL shown at the bottom of this slide. This landing page is also linked from the news item announcing the public review on the TADWIG website at tadwig.org. You can jump directly to the document links using the sidebar index. The proposed term changes are also accessible via a link in the sidebar index. Because of the large number of proposed changes, I find it easiest to review the changes grouped by class using the issue summary link circled here. After carefully reviewing the proposal package and the user feedback and implementation experience report, the Darwin Core Maintenance Group approved moving the proposal to public comment in September. The public review is ongoing until at least December 16th. This period of review is 90 days rather than the normal 30 days due to the complexity of the proposal. If you want to participate in the review of the two documents, you can follow the links in the Participating in the Review section of the landing page. This will lead you to the appropriate place in the GitHub issue tracker for the Darwin Core repository. From there, you can create or comment on issues related to the documents. To comment on the proposed term changes, navigate to the proposal issue in the tracker for the relevant term. As I mentioned earlier, an easy way to do this is via the Issues Summary link, which will lead you to summary issues for each class. From these summary issues, you can find the appropriate sub-issue for each term, where it is possible to add your comment in the tracker. In all cases, comments are made on an appropriate issues page in the tracker. If you have difficulty using the GitHub issue tracker system, you can also directly email your comments to me and I'll post them on your behalf. As issues arise, members of the public and the submission team will have dialogue through the comments. The maintenance group will try to resolve the issues through modifying the particular proposal in a way that obtains consensus. The Darwin Core Maintenance Group encourages anyone who is interested to participate in the review. Please keep in mind that some available materials show how the changes will be implemented. These implementation details happen outside of the standard and are therefore not subject to the review, which is focused only on the two proposed documents and the term changes related to them. Also, keep in mind that the conceptual model and data packages guide will be primarily used by application developers. So if you're an end user, don't feel bad if you don't have comments to offer on those documents. There will be additional opportunities for user feedback as implementations based on the new documents are developed. Thanks for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions here or via email.
So this concludes the presentations that we have scheduled for today. We have about 15 minutes left for questions, which considering the number of hands I've seen pop up occasionally between presentations, I fear may not be enough. So if we do not get to your question today, I would like to remind you that we do have unconference sessions at which you could potentially recommend or suggest additional conversations be continued. On that note, why don't we start with question? Oop, Nikki? Oh, Nikki had her hand up. We'll start with Nikki and then we'll move on.
Get them in my head. I can't ask Steve questions, is that right? I can't ask Steve questions. You can ask Steve. Okay. I wondered what the coverage of people is that submit comments to the review periods. Like, do we know that we get adequate comment?
That's a super good question. And it's a big worry, especially with this one because it's so complex. In practice, during Darwin Core reviews, the simpler ones, we get plenty of interaction. We have some conversations that go on and on and on because they're complex topics. And as a result, sometimes not even consensus is achieved. And when consensus is not achieved, the proposal is not included. Here we have an even more complex situation where often there are interdependencies. Like if we couldn't get consensus on one thing, a whole cascade of breakdowns could occur. In answer directly to your question, I fear that our community isn't sufficiently educated on what all this means to be able to make meaningful comments for a lot of it. However, it's being addressed in exactly the same way as all Darwin Core reviews have ever been done, which is the mechanism that Steve showed. And at the level of most of our community, it's looking at the terms that are being proposed. Are the terms necessary? Is there a better way to do it? Are they sufficiently well described? Is anything ambiguous? That sort of thing. And in that respect, the hope with those issue summaries was that you, as an vested, interested person, could identify the parts of it that matter to you and go directly there and forget the rest of it. So that was a hope by doing a new kind of organization of issues that we've never done before. I can't predict how many of you might participate. So far, there's been fair participation, but on some topics that are really pretty heavy, conceptual, semantic, philosophical, religious. So I don't know exactly how to answer the core question, but that's the panorama around.
I think Erica Krimmel has volunteered, hope I'm not speaking out of turn, to host some Darwin Core, what did you call them, Darwin Core hours to deal with the discussion of all of this and help people continue to get further educated about it. So I don't know that those have been scheduled yet, but I think they will be fairly soon.
Were there any questions? No? Okay.
So I also have a question which refers to the review process. If you take the time and review the model or part of the model, and you come to the conclusion that you agree with what has been proposed, is there a way to state this? Because I think it's also an important information if people agree with the model or parts of the model.
It's a very good point. This came up in a previous review where basically we're assessing Nikki's question that, okay, the people who aren't saying anything, who are there? Are there people out there who see this? And yes. So the only built-in mechanism without just flooding the issue with more comments is to use the little icons for thumbs up and so on. So it's very useful to have that kind of feedback. No, and in fact, when somebody well-known makes a comment with a thumbs up, some of their friends are like, okay, now I feel better, and they go put their thumbs up. That helps us.
Mm.
Helps us to know what matters to people as well. So good point, good question.
Thanks. My question is to Misha, who's developing the IPT. So actually, maybe it's a between question and a suggestion. So I know that the Darwin Core Data Package has been tested with different study cases, use cases, by different thematic communities. So do you think that you can reach out to thematic communities to propose? I liked very much the idea of dataset profile. So maybe they could help, or you can even have a call from different thematic communities to propose and to endorse some dataset profiles. Yeah, that's it.
The idea of profiles that users make their own profile. So we just implement the concept of profile, and the rest is up to community. So they decide what they need. We don't manage those profiles.
The idea behind the user guide, which will be, I think its development has started, but will take some time to put together, is to do exactly what you're talking about, is to think about, if you have a specific data types or specific uses or purposes, here's the place to start. Here's the tentative framework. You might have to tweak it a little bit for your specific use case, but this is kind of the domain specific or data specific idea. Pass it to Tim.
Thank you. I'll introduce myself again in case anyone joined in the second section. I'm Tim Robertson, Deputy Director and Head of Informatics at GBIF. I'd like to follow up on the profile comment, and it's been very interesting to John and I, because when we went through the data modeling work over the last few years, we built a conceptual model. And then we had this idea of publishing models for different communities. And we started going down that road where we had the DwC-DP for the checklists. We had CamTrap-DP for camera trap specific projects. And we were starting to think about community specific publishing models. And we got some quite strong feedback suggesting, please don't do that, because you have the potential to fragment our community. And we were encouraged to try and bring it back together into a single publishing model. So this has been a really interesting experience for John and I, that as we did that, what we found is things got more complicated again. And people are now looking at it and they're saying, wow, this is overwhelming. We've got some people saying, wow, this is really exciting. I can see my data fits in there. And lots of other people, many with operational experience, are going, wow, are we really going to be able to do that? So what's coming out is the idea again of profiles, simplified publishing models. And it could well be that maybe we do land in that place with simplified profiles, but we know that you can integrate those data together in a larger conceptual model should you need to. Now, I would like to comment on one other operational thing. Metabarcoding data is exploding in the GBIF community, and we are seeing lots and lots of data sets and activities there. And we have Darwin Core Archives, and we have extensions. We've got the DNA extension for Darwin Core Archives. We are now seeing Darwin Core Archives with around about 27 million detections of organisms using metabarcoding eDNA techniques. And these archives are 0.5 terabyte of data. And the reason they're 0.5 terabyte is because of that star schema. You've got the environmental assertions that are, what was measured while you were making your samples. You've got the DNA analysis measurements and metadata. which is both repeated for every occurrence. And you've got massive, massive repetition. So as a data publishing model for metabarcoding, it ain't going to work. So the Darwin Core Data Package has been implemented in the GBIF Metabarcoding Data Toolkit. The same input data, in some cases, can drop 1,000 times in size because of that repetition. So not 10 times bigger, not 100 times, but 3 orders of magnitude difference by these two formats. So just for operational reasons, as we move into metabarcoding data, we will need to implement something like this. So it could well be, and I'm not trying to contradict Fede in any way. Actually, while I have the mic, I'd like to congratulate Federico on his recent promotion to being head of engineering at GBIF. He leads all of our engineering aspects. But it could well be that we at GBIF will need to implement part of this to support the metabarcoding community, even if we don't support everything all in one go. So where we are at this stage is we feel like we've taken this modeling work to a good point that we can bring to the community. And that's the great thing about TADWIG and this world. We can have open discussion about this, and we can put a proposal up and we can consider it, and we can reflect on the feedback. And that's where we are right now, is rather than this just being a GBIF activity, we now think this is moving towards a standards direction. So we bring it to TADWIG and we ask you to give us feedback, and we will reflect and revise and react to that. And that's where we are in this process. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And that's the perfect segue back to our first question, to which Steve Baskoff has provided a response in the chat as well. And so he specifically said that the number of comments depend on the topic. And so there have been significant discussion on some issues and no discussion on other. And we have approximately 5 minutes left in the session. Time for 1, possibly 2 questions, depending on how dense the question is.
Thanks. I'm curious to hear about how accommodating the Darwin Core Data Package is to trait measurements. My understanding is that measurements, assertions can be made on materials or occurrences, but maybe specifically, is the data package accommodating of nested trait measurements? For example, you might have a plant specimen with leaf measurements, but leaves are grouped by branch, and you have multiple branches per specimen, etc.
Okay. There is no recursive relationship on assertions at this time. It was considered, but we didn't have a strong use case for it. It can still be done, but I would call it a kludge, and that is adding yet another assertion talking about the previous assertion. It's not connected the right way, and so it's not clearly obvious. So the other existing examples of how this might be used were not nearly as problematic. For example, statistics about something. A measurement that was a mean and its standard deviation. There's not really any problem to connect the two to a material sample. But you're relying on the controlled vocabulary about the assertion type to know that they're related to each other. So if we have strong need to make these kinds of relationships that are strong, then it's a simple change. We add another term, which is the related to assertion ID that can allow that recursiveness. So have a good use case? Bring it.
So I have a question that might bridge that question and some of the review questions, which is, it seems to me, not having been part of the review process, that these use cases have been great ways of probing the model and finding ways it needs to be improved. Is there a forum in which maybe as a verbal thing, as a meeting kind of thing, we can bring together some people who have weird use cases and sophisticated people who really know the proposed model who could talk through, oh, yeah, that's easy to take care of. Here's how we would do it. Or, oh, crap, I'm not sure. We'll have to think about that, without us having to deeply understand all the aspects of the model to be able to answer it ourselves, because we probably can't do it correctly.
If I'm allowed to say what I want. To say what I want, yeah. We've been basically doing what you just said now for over a year, and the plan is to continue that. And the hope would be that now we can produce more experts that can answer such questions instead of just me. But the plan would be that at least for the next year, I'm available to help with exactly that. Nikki, actually.
Oh, 2 minutes left. Yeah, okay, Lynn and then Nikki, and then I think we are out of time for questions for today.
Okay, just a short question. So I was wondering what to do with project level metadata. So I'm familiar with the Darwin Core archives, that's the EML. But when I try to map the project level metadata, I could also use the highest events. So I'm not sure what is the role of EML in the Darwin Core Data Package. Where do you map project level data? That's my question.
It's on. Now it's on. Yeah, projects are interesting. We had a preliminary investigation into projects as a class and left it without implementation because we didn't have the use case that we needed to solve yet. We knew it was important. GBIF already sees the demand for this, but we don't have the project class implemented. All we have at the moment is, as you said, metadata in EML or in the provenance class to say project name. So yes, project titles and project IDs, but that's not the metadata. You can list them, but not what you're talking about. So yes, we can develop a project class. Happy to do so.
Okay, and last question.
I really liked what you said about developing more experts. So how do you plan to go about that?
That's a very good question. We start by sharing where we are, and that's what we're doing in this conference. We're bringing it to the correct body, TADWIG, to have this discussion. I think we have taken it as far as we could with the work that we did at GBIF. So that's why we bring this work forward. So we held a training event for the GBIF node managers, and the GBIF node and that's an internal meeting. So I'm actually going to correct something that John said earlier, where the training that GBIF had was really an internal socializing this work across the GBIF node management community so that they can start to understand it. And they're daunted as well. You know, this is daunting because we are going back to expert models that were Anton presented, and we're trying to sort of train people up on database modeling, which is hard for many people. So we started trying to build that capacity and train people across the GBIF community, and then they hopefully will be able to sort of proliferate that out around their communities. We're bringing it to TADWIG to ask the TADWIG community to look and, you know, progressively expand on this. What we've talked about and what's come up in the GBIF discussions is we need to keep our community together. This can't just be an informatics, you know, we want to go there quickly and just lose everyone. That's not going to work. So we are, you know, we will probably make mistakes in this process, but we're trying to put it out as something for discussion so that we can reflect and feedback on that. But yeah, we would welcome ideas and suggestions on how we can improve this. Thank you. Thanks.
So following up on that, and as Tim said, during the Global Nodes training just this last week, we did do a training session on the Darwin Core Data Package, and all of the materials are freely available on the website. I have a QR code, awkward, I didn't have a chance to put it up anywhere, so you're welcome to come up afterwards and scan my phone so you can go find it yourself on your own phone. But the training materials are opened, they're free, they're there for people to use and learn a little bit more about the Darwin Core Data Package themselves. And on that, we are out of time. I want to say a big thank you to all of our speakers. You did fantastic. We learned a whole lot from you. I hope people follow up with you through the rest of the conference and keep you very busy. Thank you to our audience. You've been awesome, fantastic questions, lots of stuff for us to think about, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks.
anecdotes, the curtains, 'cause all we need is can